So subscribe and ding the bell to let YouTube know you want to see more. Well, it's about time.
Huh? About time for what?
I saw your script for today. All this history of writing and mythology, but for a guy named Thor? You barely touched Norse mythology, baby.
Well, it's the Christmas season, so of course I went digging for holidays centered around books and writing, and that led me to an old tradition from Iceland called Jolabokaflod, which roughly translates to the Christmas book flood, with origins reaching as far back as the Vikings. Naturally, this comes with stories of revenge, murder, spicier topics, gods and goddesses. Hello guys, gals, and all things in between. I'm AU Thor.
You can call me Jazz.
Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, everyone knows these holidays and their traditions. Whether you set up a nativity scene or light a menorah, these are pretty common traditions around the world. But nearly every culture has their own unique way of celebrating this time of year. And for some, it's evolved into its own recognized holiday itself. And that's where the Icelandic Christmas book flood comes in. Icelandic culture has a long literary history that starts way before Iceland was even first settled, starting with the ancient Nordic runes. While their origins have been debated, some of the earliest runes have been dated to around 150 AD. And even though several runic alphabets existed, we're focusing on the one known as Elder Futhark from around the Viking Age. These runes told stories of great warriors, the Norse gods, and epic poetry about Odin, Freya, Loki, and of course, Thor.
You want me to put the hammer down?
By the 800s, when Iceland was settled by the Norse peoples, these ancient runes had been simplified to the appropriately named Younger Futhark. But the runes and mythological stories weren't brought to Iceland right away. In fact, Norse sailors kinda discovered Iceland on accident. According to the medieval Icelandic tale Landnámabók, the Norse Viking Nadod set sail from Norway for a quick jaunt to the Faroe Islands. But apparently their GPS broke down because they got lost and overshot their destination by like 500 kilometers, or around 300 miles in very rough estimates, give or take. Nadod called this place Snowland. I guess the ice part came about later.
Once sailors started intentionally sailing to Snowland, they started bringing all those old runes and writings with them.
But settling a new land came with a lot of issues. Countless deaths through harsh winters, familial feuds, and children avenging their slain parents in literal revenge quests. Things weren't quite so peaceful. But then again, Vikings didn't tend to have the most peaceful demeanor to begin with. All of these struggles and more were recorded in what are now known as the sagas of the Icelanders. The runic alphabet was used to record stories of gods and men, heroes and revenge, many based on actual genealogy. And these really cemented literature as an important aspect of Icelandic culture. For example, Egil Saga tells of a family driven out of Norway to settle in Iceland, retelling more personal tales of fights and friendships that might otherwise not have been told over time. But whether these sagas are fact or fiction, they capture the early culture and life of Iceland in vivid detail, and the writing tradition continued through the centuries, relatively free to grow and expand in any way it wanted, since Iceland tended to keep to itself. Even during the World War eras, Iceland remained neutral, but they still felt the effects of the world economy, so post-World War Christmas was shaping up to look very different for the Icelandic people. And that's where the Christmas book flood comes in.
The tradition started in 1944 as a result of World War II.
Since Iceland was a neutral country, its citizens had plenty of cash burning a hole in their pockets. But thanks to the fighting across the world, plenty of strict import restrictions were in place, except on paper. Those restrictions were far more lenient. Naturally, this led to books becoming the gift of choice. If only there was a way to know what titles were available. Luckily, that year marked the first publication of the Journal of Books, listing every single novel, poetry, children's book, translation, and nonfiction officially published in Iceland in a given year. In more recent times, this catalog is sent out to each house around November as the winter festivities ramp up. This tradition has completely shifted the Icelandic publishing industry. The vast majority of Icelandic literature is published a few months before Christmas, with a mid-2000 sales report estimating their profits in December accounting for 60% of their yearly sales, most only a few days before Christmas. A 2013 study conducted at Bifrost University found that 50% of Icelanders read more than 8 books a year, and 93% read at least one. The culture of giving presents is very deeply rooted in how families perceive Christmas as a holiday. Normally, we give the presents on the night of the 24th, and people spend the night reading. In many ways, it's the backbone of the publishing sector here in Iceland. You've no doubt seen countless articles online about how books and reading are going out of fashion, But for some, it's not just a hobby, it's literally a way of life. So if you need some last-minute Christmas ideas, why not indulge in the Jolabokaflod and hit up a bookstore? It's a tradition a couple thousand years in the making. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, Merry Christmas Book Flood.
Catch you later, baby.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening into today's broadcast. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell to never miss another one of our fancy newfangled moving pictures. Tune in next week to catch another thrilling installment with AU Thor.